First story. My husband's sudden friendship with a coworker made me question his loyalty. What I found in his messages left me heartbroken. For the past few weeks, I've noticed something unsettling happening with my husband, and it's been eating away at me. At first, I told myself I was just being paranoid, but the more I thought about it, the harder it became to ignore. My husband, who's normally a laid-back guy, has been mentioning this new coworker of his, let's call her Sarah, a lot more lately. And not just in passing, it's like every time he talks about work, her name somehow pops up. At first, I brushed it off. I mean, coworkers talk, right? But this was different. What started as casual mentions here and there quickly escalated. In just 2 weeks, I learned they were now playing an online game together, and the frequency of those mentions increased exponentially. I couldn't help but notice how excited he seemed when he talked about her. He'd casually mention how fun she was, or how they shared a lot in common. Then one night, he told me about a work story that ended with him casually saying, "Oh, and Sarah was wearing this cute anime sweater today." Now I know it might sound silly, but that comment didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just about the sweater. It was the way he said it. He didn't have to mention her outfit, and the way he smiled when he spoke about it, like he was admiring her in a way that made me uncomfortable, just felt off. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was overreacting. But then I remembered a few other instances where he had mentioned her outfits in the past. He described them as cool or stylish, and every time the emphasis was on her. I had to ask myself, was I just imagining things? After that night, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling. The next day, when he was talking about her again, I finally couldn't hold it in any longer. I told him how I was feeling, how uncomfortable I was that he seemed to talk about her more than anyone else at work, how it felt like he was making a bigger deal out of her than he had with other colleagues. And the thing that really bothered me was the way he described her looks. He seemed genuinely surprised when I told him how I felt. He apologized almost immediately, saying he didn't mean it in any way, that he thought the sweater was just cute, and there was absolutely nothing going on between them. He reassured me that everyone at work knew he was married, and Sarah was married too. He insisted that she loved her husband and that it was all just harmless conversation. But even as he said it, there was something in his voice, a hesitation, that made me doubt his words. I wanted to believe him. I've always trusted him. We've been married for 10 years now, and I've never questioned his loyalty until now. But my gut kept telling me that something wasn't right. For the first time, I couldn't just brush it off. I tried to convince myself that it was just a friendship, nothing more. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being naive. Then came the moment that I never thought I'd reach. I asked him if I could look at his messages with her. I had never asked to see his phone before, and honestly, I felt terrible doing it. But I needed to see for myself if there was something I was missing. He handed over his phone without hesitation, saying, "Go ahead." What I found wasn't exactly what I feared, but it still left me with a sense of betrayal. The messages weren't anything explicit, nothing that screamed cheating, but there was something in the way he was talking to her that made me feel like I was looking at a different version of him. He initiated almost every conversation, and the way he texted her, it reminded me of how we used to text when we first started dating. Playful, light, and dare I say, flirty. It felt like he was trying to get her attention in subtle ways, but it was clear he craved it. The messages were full of inside jokes and personal stories, things I never imagined him sharing with someone else. I asked him if I could see a picture of her, and when he showed me, I could see why he was so drawn to her. She was undeniably pretty. Beautiful even. The thought crossed my mind, would he cheat on me if she felt the same way about him? I didn't think she did. She seemed very much in love with her own husband. But it still stung. And what bothered me the most was that he was actively trying to keep this connection with her outside of work. When I confronted him about it, he was apologetic again. He said he'd keep their conversations strictly professional from now on, if that would make me feel better. But honestly, it didn't make me feel better. I felt awful. I felt like I was second-guessing everything. I didn't want to be the jealous wife who didn't trust her husband. But at the same time, my gut was screaming at me that something wasn't right. I've never had a crush during our marriage, and I understand that it's normal to find other people attractive. But this felt different. This wasn't just harmless attraction. This was my husband actively seeking attention from someone else. It felt like a betrayal, even if nothing physical had happened. Now I'm left wondering, am I overreacting? Should I just trust him and move on? Or is there something I'm missing? What would you do if you were in my shoes? I don't know what to think anymore. Second story. Feeling left behind. My brother gets generous handouts while my family struggles. How can I confront my parents about their unequal treatment? I've been trying to wrap my head around something for a while now, and I really need to get it off my chest. My parents have always been together, but when it comes to money, it's a different story. My dad has always been the spender. He loves indulging in his hobbies, and he's pretty generous with that, especially when it comes to my brother. In the past, they've gone half-seas on stuff they share an interest in, and that's fine. But things have gotten really out of hand lately, and I can't help but feel hurt and frustrated by it all. Now my brother, he's doing really well. He's got a family, a nice house, and his wife is doing well too. Both of them bringing in 6 figures. They're incredibly generous when it comes to their income. But there's something that's been bothering me for a while. About 3 years ago, my brother bought this hobby farm. A vacation home, I guess you could say. And he made it sound like they were struggling financially, like they were living paycheck to paycheck. But then I found out that he'd bought a brand new tractor, a new caravan, and not 1, but 3 expensive cars. He doesn't seem to be slowing down on his spending either. Meanwhile, I can barely even wrap my head around how he claims he's poor. It's maddening. But what really stings is that my parents, especially my dad, loaned him about $40,000. At least, that's what they told me. They won't confirm the exact amount, but it's somewhere around there. The deal was that he'd pay it back when his financial situation got better, which honestly sounds like a load of nonsense to me. He keeps saying that when my parents pass, he'll make sure to pay it back, but I know deep down that it'll likely end up being a gift, not a loan. That money is going to stay in his hands, and I'm left wondering what happens to me and my family when the time comes. On the other hand, my little family is barely getting by. My husband works hard, but he doesn't make anywhere near 6 figures. We're renting a place, and I'm unable to work at the moment. We're also looking into buying a house, but getting into the market feels impossible right now. We're doing everything we can to save, but it's tough. So, when I found out yesterday that my brother is buying a brand new electric vehicle and a new off-road vehicle, a Polaris or something like that, and my dad is going half-size with him again, another $20,000, I just couldn't believe it. And my dad's reasoning? It's his hobby, so he's happy to spend the money because it gives him access to the farm. It's almost like my dad doesn't even realize how much he's enabling this behavior. What really gets under my skin is how my brother treats my dad. He's always treated him poorly, but the moment my dad offers him more money, suddenly everything's fine. He's all too happy to let my dad use his farm whenever he feels like it. And to make matters worse, my dad's been spending his own money on things for the farm without even consulting my mom. It's like he's treating the farm as if it's his own, even though it's my brother's. Here's where it gets especially frustrating. It feels completely unfair. My brother is getting handouts left and right, and when my parents pass, I know it'll all stay with his family. There's no way for me to prove that the money was my dad's in the first place. Meanwhile, my family is scraping by with second-hand stuff, constantly relying on sales or used items to survive. My parents don't seem to be doing anything for us, and I'm hurt by it. My brother's family is doing so well, and I just feel like we're getting left behind. For Christmas this year, my dad found out that I needed a headlamp, something that would cost just over $100. He actually told me he wouldn't buy it for me because they were too expensive, and he missed the sales. I didn't think much of it at the time, because I understand trying to save money, but after hearing about the $20,000 he's giving to my brother, it just feels like a slap in the face. Now, I want to be fair here. My mom isn't really a spender. She never approved of my brother's hobby farm in the first place. She's always seen how much stress it's causing him, but it almost feels like she's given up trying to argue with my dad about it. My dad doesn't even ask for her opinion anymore. He just decides he's going to spend money on whatever he wants, and that's it. It's frustrating because it feels like there's no balance in how my parents are treating us. I've been stewing over this for a while now, and I'm honestly struggling to figure out how to approach them. I don't want to seem ungrateful, but this situation just feels so incredibly unfair. I'm hurt by the way my parents are treating me and my family. My brother is getting all the help he needs, while we're left to fend for ourselves. How do I even bring this up to them without it turning into a huge fight? How do I make it clear that I don't feel like we're being treated equally? I'd really appreciate your thoughts on this. Am I being unreasonable? How can I communicate my feelings without causing more tension? And is there any way to make this more fair for my family and me? I'm open to honest opinions, but kindness would go a long way. Thanks for reading. Third story. I found a 3-legged kitten and adopted her, but my neighbors tried to steal her back. The bizarre, suspenseful drama that followed will blow your mind. Let me tell you about the time I found an abandoned kitten and ended up tangled in a bizarre situation with my neighbors that lasted for months. It was the kind of small-town drama you never expect to happen, but when it does, it's unforgettable. It all started when I was around 16 or 17 years old. My mom had taken my younger sister with her on a shopping trip, and I was left home alone. As usual, the back door was left open for our elderly dog to go out into the yard. He loved basking in the sun, and we didn't mind him roaming around outside for a while. I was chilling in the living room, watching TV, when I noticed a strange little figure appearing in the hallway. At first, I couldn't make out what it was, but as it came closer, I realized it was a kitten, so tiny and frail that I didn't think it could even walk properly. I jumped up and rushed over to the kitten, who seemed pretty worn out, like it had been wandering for a while. As I guided it into another room to keep it away from the dog, I saw something that made me pause: a missing leg. This poor kitten only had 3 legs, yet it was still so determined and seemed happy to be safe. I let it rest on the couch and texted my mom to tell her what had happened. She rushed back home as soon as she could. When she arrived, we both took a closer look at the kitten. It didn't have a collar, and we knew that releasing it back outside wasn't an option, especially given its condition. So my mom went around to the neighboring units to see if anyone was looking for the little thing. Our neighbors weren't the easiest people to deal with, to say the least. We'd had our issues with them before. Small annoyances like them revving their motorcycle late at night or causing a rat problem in the shared walls between our houses. But nothing major, nothing worth starting a fight over. So when my mom knocked on their door, the tension was already thick. The woman who answered explained that her cat had recently had a litter of kittens. Apparently, the cat had escaped one night and met a stray tomcat. The kittens had come from this unplanned encounter, and the mother cat had given birth to a litter that was a bit too big for her. As a result, some of the kittens hadn't fully developed. One of them had been born without a leg. The neighbors mentioned that the kittens had escaped, and they didn't want them back. They didn't care what happened to the kitten we'd found, and even said we could keep her if we wanted. They didn't bother trying to find the rest of the kittens either. The little one had crawled under the rotted fence between our properties to get into our yard. After hearing their story, we were left with a decision. Despite our hesitation, since we already had a dog in the house, we decided to take the kitten in. We let her sleep in my bedroom that night, away from the dog, while we figured out what to do. By morning, we had made up our minds. The dog had no interest in the kitten, and we could tell he was past the days of chasing cats. So we made it official. The next day, we went to the pet store to buy all the essentials: food bowls, a bed, litter box, kitten food, and even some toys. As we were shopping, we ran into the neighbors again. Living in a small town definitely has its perks. Everyone seems to know your business. They didn't say much, but just gave us a quick, "Congratulations on the new cat." I could feel the uncomfortable tension as they looked at us, but we just went about our business. We then took her to the vet for a checkup. The vet confirmed she was healthy, aside from her missing leg, and updated her shots. We were officially her owners, and we even got medical paperwork to back it up. We found out that we weren't the only ones who had adopted one of the kittens. The rest of the litter had found homes around the neighborhood. And it turned out that one of the other kittens was also missing a leg. I guess the small-town vibe worked in our favor. We were all going to the same vet, so the vet had already seen the entire litter and had the records on file. Everything seemed to be settling into place. We had our new kitten, and the dog was fine with it. The whole family had embraced her, and life went on as normal for about 2 months. Then things started to get weird. Out of nowhere, the neighbors came over and demanded the kitten back. My mom stood her ground and politely told them that the kitten was now ours, legally adopted and registered. The parents didn't back down, insisting their daughters still wanted the kitten. It was a little odd, considering they had said they didn't care what happened to the kitten when they first told us to keep her. But we refused to give her back. The neighbors started threatening to call the police, but no one came. We had the adoption papers, and that was enough. Then things escalated. A few days later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find a little girl, probably around 6 years old, standing there, looking up at me with big, sad eyes. She asked, "Can I see my kitty?" I called my mom over, and she handled it much more gracefully than I could have. She showed the girl the kitten and explained that we were now her family. The girl gave the kitten a pet, looking heartbroken, and then ran back to her house. We could see her parents watching from their porch, glaring at us. It was clear they had sent their daughter over to guilt-trip us. That's when my mom had the kitten microchipped. Things were getting sketchy, and we wanted to be sure that if the neighbors ever tried to take her, we'd have proof that she was ours. Over the next few weeks, the neighbors kept coming by, asking for the cat back. But it didn't stop there. They started spreading rumors around the neighborhood, telling people that we had stolen their daughter's cat. My little sister brought a friend over one day, and the friend asked if it was true that we had stolen the cat. My mom was furious, but explained everything, including that the kitten had been relinquished to us. We weren't thieves. Still, the rumors persisted. Then, right around Christmas, things took a turn for the worse. One evening, we heard a loud crash coming from the driveway. We rushed outside to find that the father from the neighbor's family had backed his truck into our car. He was drunk, and he had done so quickly. My mom called the police, but when they showed up, they found out he had no driver's license, no registration for his truck, and no insurance. He was angry and started yelling at my mom, accusing her of being a thief. According to him, we had kidnapped his daughter's innocent kitten. I didn't want to get involved, so I ran back inside, leaving my mom to deal with it. Less than 2 weeks later, they vanished. They packed up and moved out, cutting all contact. For almost a year, we heard nothing from them. Then, a family friend ran into the father working at a gas station in the next town over. My mom contacted his employer, explained the situation, and managed to get the information needed to send him a letter. After some back and forth with the job, we were able to get the money for the damages to our car through a court order. They tried to countersue, claiming we had stolen their kitten. But the case was dismissed when we provided all the necessary documents proving we had legally adopted her. The kitten, now fully grown, is still with us. She's a pampered princess who runs the house and demands constant attention. I visit her often and give her all the cuddles. We even ended up adopting 2 more rescue cats. Sadly, our dog passed away in 2019, but he had lived a spoiled, happy life before that. As for the neighbors, we cut all contact with them after the lawsuit was settled, and they stopped trying to take the cat back once the countersuit was dismissed. Every now and then, we run into someone from that family, and the glares are still there if they recognize us. I still have the pictures from the day I found her. She was only about 7 weeks old. If anyone wants to see them, let me know.